For question 7D, we're going to again look at the restrictions, and we're going to look at the restrictions inside. There's our inside restriction, and we can state our basic restriction as n squared minus 7 is greater than or equal to 0. If we want to do a more comprehensive restriction, we have to kind of think of what does that look like. N squared minus 7 is a parabola centered at 0 and has roots at root 7 and negative root 7. It's a parabola facing up. So when we look at the part that is above the x-axis or greater than 0, we're talking about this section here and this section here. So to state the restriction on this, we can say that it's going to be bigger than or equal to root 7 and less than or equal to negative root 7. And that would be a more comprehensive restriction. Okay, but in the end, these all just represent the restriction on the inside value of the radical. Okay, so we also want to solve this. To solve this, the idea then is we want to isolate the radical first. So I'm going to subtract 2n from both sides. So I get n squared minus 7 in the brackets, which are inside the radical, and I end with 14 minus 2n. And since there's a common factor of 2 and it's an equation, I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by 2. And we end up with 7 minus n. Now we don't have to do this, but this just gives our smaller coefficients to deal with, which is often advantageous. So we want to undo the square root by squaring. Okay, so we're going to square both sides, and this is where we can introduce extraneous solutions. So we're going to have to check for extraneous solutions. But when I do this, I end up with the square and square root undo each other. Here I cannot apply the square across that minus, so I have to expand this with multiplication. So I get 7 times 7, negative 7 times, or 7 times negative n, 7 times negative n twice, so I get negative 14n plus n squared. Again, it's really important that you never apply exponents or roots across pluses and minuses. So this is a quadratic equation. However, the nice thing about this quadratic equation is that the quadratic parts of that cancel out. So we're left with, and we're just going to solve for n. I'm going to add 14n to both sides and add 7 to both sides to get 56. So that plus 14n will get rid of the minus 14n. Okay, the plus 7 gets rid of the minus 7 there. And we end up with 14n equals 56. I divide both sides by 14. That looks like n is equal to 4. Okay, so I have a solution for n. However, since we're squaring both sides of this equation, we have to check for extraneous solutions. So my check is going to look like this. I'm going to plug it into my original equation. So 2 times 4 plus 2 times 4 squared in the square root minus 7. And that's going to be equal to 14. Now I need to check to see that this is in fact true. So I get 8 plus 2 times square root 4 squared is 16, minus 7 is 9. So I get 8 plus 2 times 3, and that's equal to 14. Okay, that is true. 8 plus 6 is 14. So we know that this is a valid solution. So n equals 4. We'll give it a check.